My dad actually turned me onto the show. He was like, you gotta watch this new show on Netflix, this Marvel show. It's called Daredevil. It's pretty badass. And I was like, okay. And I remember first memory that I have of watching it is that Doc fight scene. I was like, whoa, this is brutal. He runs up on that guy and breaks his ankle. And immediately it felt different from anything that had been in the MCU up until that point.
My first viewing of the show was the 5-minute one-shot fight scene that was on YouTube. And I remember watching it as a kid, maybe fresh off of Winter Soldier. And I was like, this is a superhero show? Like, this looks cool. It's different. It's grounded. He's like huffing and puffing. What I think really brought me into the show was the fact that it didn't feel like a superhero show. It felt like a good, well-written character drama that just so happened to have a character who had superpowers.
Facts.
And I think that's really what differentiated it from other comic book TV shows and even movies, that it just felt so authentic.
Do you remember that all we really had to compare it to at the time that it came out was Arrow?
It was.
It sounds weird to say, but that was the closest we had in terms of dark or gritty superhero TV shows to compare this to back at the time when it came out, 2015. And I remember you and I talking about how Arrow season 1 and 2, we tried to argue that it was almost Daredevil level, which I don't know if that holds up, but
I don't think that holds up.
That was the era that we were in, right? Arrow had kind of come in and been like, what if we made Green Arrow like Batman and he's, breaking people's arms and whatever. But then Daredevil came and like you said, elevated that to the level of just a high quality TV show in general. And you see that in all aspects.
It feels complex. It feels grown up. But I think that it's not talking down to its audience.
It's very gritty.
And you mentioned this coming out around the same time as Winter Soldier. Coming off of Winter Soldier, which had some of the best fight scenes we had ever seen in the MCU, comes Daredevil, which also introduces, like you said, some of the best fight scenes we've ever seen in the MCU, to include the hallway fights, which was an instant hood classic.
But he's not invulnerable. You see that person getting tired, and what you see is this test of will that's stronger than everybody else's.
We would always joke that if he fought Thanos in a hallway, Daredevil wins via...
He would win. Dude, 100%.
Wins via getting up slowly and tired and delivering one final...
And then he'd do the thing where he's always like,
Yeah, well, I mean, just the fact that we're joking about that is just like how much of an impact it had.
Season 1 and the beginning of season 2 had the best choreography. Nothing against season 3, him versus Bullseye. The hallway fight scene of season 3 was one of the best one-shots I've ever seen. I think the low budget aspect of the Netflix shows, They have to work with the lighting that they're given. They have to be really creative with the camera work, and that really pays off. An underrated fight scene, I think, is the final fight in season 1 where Daredevil is fighting off against Fisk in the alleyway.
Dude, can we talk about Fisk? Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal of Wilson Fisk. Vincent D'Onofrio is such a talented actor. He has this off-kilter element to him. It just adds so much intrigue to his character. Anytime he's on screen, you don't know what he's gonna do next. I think one of the beautiful things about the show is that you see Matt and Fisk's relationship become more personal of a rivalry as the show goes on. If there's one thing that the show does beautifully, and I remember seeing this in an interview, their relationship is constructed so that they don't actually spend that much time together. But that fact makes it more intense and more gripping when they actually do.
If they do get too close to each other, there will be an explosion. And so as a result, you can't bring them together casually too often. And if you do, you have to do it in very specific circumstances whereby there is a reason for them not to get at each other physically.
Every second that they're together is intense, and it always counts.
And I think one of the best aspects of Matt's character throughout the entire 3 seasons that they never quite resolve, and I don't think it should ever be resolved, is that Matt is this broken character who has all this, so much underlying anger. He's broken and he's always on the edge of just snapping. Like there's so many times throughout the show where he wants to kill Fisk. Yeah, Punisher is such a great character in season 2, not just because of Punisher being a great character, but because of how the story tries to bring out that side of Matt that he keeps burying.
What about Hope? Oh, fuck. Come on, Frank. Santa Claus? You want to talk about Santa Claus?
I also have to give credit to Charlie Cox. Like, he has to play a blind character, but also act like he is not blind. Everything down to like where his eyes are. He knows where you are, but he's also not looking directly into you.
There's also that famous anecdote of how following Daredevil, he struggled to get roles of seeing people because of the amount of time that he spent as someone blind.
Also he did a huge chunk of the stunts.
Every season, Charlie does more and more of the actual action. He trains harder than any actor and most stunt people that I know.
I don't think you could really cast anyone better than Charlie Cox. Ben Affleck did a great job, of course, but Charlie Cox has really cemented himself as the Daredevil. Maybe one of my favorite things about the show is that it's not just Matt's show. It's just as much as his show as it is like Foggy's show and Karen's show and Fisk's show.
The character dynamics are fantastic. Each of the central cast is a really fleshed out and interesting character. Karen's fantastic.
She was hoping that if she ever got a second chance, she would get us the hell out of here.
I think they did a lot with Karen's character, and especially on rewatch, I was really pleasantly surprised because she could have very easily just been a love interest character with little depth, but she's got a very interesting story.
And every aspect of these characters still brings out something, changes his perspective on something.
And the aesthetic too. You've got all the scum in New York hanging out at this one place.
I don't think that Daredevil should be anything less than disgusting looking. Like, it is representing like the crime, the shitty part. You never know what's around the corner.
And if you're talking about Matt Murdock, who's out there working as a lawyer and then by night fighting crime, that's not shiny, happy.
Everything that you get, whether it's supposed to be something that's new or not, has to go under a certain level of Hell's Kitchen aging. So everything sort of exists in this kind of dirty, gritty, used world.
In the beginning, it's very much a very high contrast, neon colors, aiming for a straight out of the comics look. As the show goes on, you see that to maybe a little bit lesser of an extent in season 2, where you start to get a bit more of the realistic look. And then going full force in season 3, you get that thriller, desaturated, more gray look, although not done as ugly as is done in the Marvel movies.
I would agree. I think season 1 was very experimental. They're still finding their footing. Almost everyone can agree that season 2 is the weakest season of the show, but I can't emphasize enough how good it still is.
Bang.
I genuinely believe that Daredevil season 2 is better than almost anything the MCU up to this point has put out. I understand that the pacing is a little rushed. I understand that they try to implement a lot of the hand and balancing the Punisher and everything, but there's still so many ideas that just work so well. I love that Matt just feels like every aspect of his life is like extremely stressed.
I remember texting you about this when I was watching season 2. Even though the Elektra plotline feels forced, it feels like 2 different shows. At the same time, it does introduce that element of Matt having to balance those 2 aspects of his life, which almost feels Spider-Man-esque. You think back to Spider-Man 2, where he has to balance his jobs plus school plus crime fighting, where Matt has to balance these missions with Elektra while he's in the trial of the century. And it does add this really cool element of stress.
Sure, like the fights weren't as like well choreographed. It did start to feel a little more superhero-y. There's still like so much heart that they put into the season.
Yeah, it felt like side missions. It felt like doing side missions in Spider-Man. I can easily see a world where the hand plotline was the result of studio interference, because the studio really wanted to make the Defenders, and they knew that that's where that plotline was going to go. So I can forgive it in that sense. Everything with the Punisher is fucking beautiful. From his introduction to his rooftop episode with Daredevil, which is 90% dialogue, and yet it's still one of the most gripping episodes in the entire show.
I will stand by and die on the hill that that's like one of the best dialogue exchanges in TV history.
What do? You act like it's a playground. You beat up the bullies with your fists. A day later, they're back on the streets doing the same goddamn thing.
And they're having a very real conversation. It's like, because, not only are there people who believe both sides of that argument, but me, myself, I believe both sides of those arguments, right? Depending on what mood you're in, right?
Only I do the one thing that you can't. You hit them and they get back up. I hit them and they stay down. It's permanent. I make sure that they don't make it out on the street again. I take pride in that.
I was like, he kind of has a point.
Your more moral side probably says, what right do you have to decide if someone lives or dies, right? It's like the question, if somebody's coming after your family, are you morally in the wrong to kill them?
When a show can do that to you, I think it just shows how good it is.
When he's yelling and his veins are popping and he's like, you hit him and they get back up,
I hit him and they stay down.
He's so good. Like John Bernthal, they could not have picked a better guy to play that role.
He is Frank Castle.
He is, and he just carries it so well. I can't express how grateful I am that he's going to continue to play that role.
I'm a rubber-faced clown, you know? Cried so hard without my baby. You know, I see my girl, she's not crying, she's holding me up.
I think that one of the things that makes season 3 so successful isn't just the fact that they were no longer trying to find their footing. It's also near perfect in almost every department, especially the writing. Like the first time watching it, I was like, oh my God, they wrote him into this corner. Like they cannot get out of this. That's something that I think a lot of great writers do really well, is that they write the plot and characters into a corner. And so you have to think outside the box how to get them out of that corner.
Yeah.
And season 3 does that like every episode. And it's stressful. Like I was rewatching it a couple of weeks ago and I was like, I'm genuinely stressed, and I've seen this. I know what's going to happen at the end.
You have Matt being discredited on both sides from Fisk. This is like Fisk's endgame. So he's got Matt Murdock discredited, which is genius, almost to the point of you wondering why he didn't do that in the first 2 seasons. And then on the Daredevil side, he gives Bullseye his Daredevil suit to then discredit him on that front. And it does put Matt Murdock on this corner of how the hell is he going to come out of this, even if he beats Fisk. He's a wanted man. The city's turned against Daredevil. And we didn't even talk about his whole arc in season 3 of his relationship with God and how he begins to lose faith in not the existence of God, but the goodness of God, which I thought was interesting.
Thank God for you.
He didn't help you. I did.
He sort of alienated everyone in his life at that point. He lost Elektra, but he was spared. He thinks that he's done more bad than good as Daredevil. And he's like, I don't see the point. Like, what is my purpose here? Like, I think God has led me astray.
I still tear up, or at least get like a little bit emotional when I hear him talking to Maggie about how God's plan is beautiful, but we can only see it from the back as if it were the back of a painting.
A tapestry.
Yeah, exactly.
It did wrap everything up very nicely. So to see where it goes from here will be interesting.
Every show is trying to be Daredevil and failing. Jessica Jones did pretty well during its first season, and then I think pretty much universally season 2 and 3 are not regarded as that good.
I think it's going to be hard to recapture the magic of Daredevil, not just a Daredevil show, anything else that tries to replicate like what made it work so well. It wasn't just the fact that it was R-rated, it wasn't just the fact that it was brutal, and there are attempts out there to replicate what made Daredevil so good, but I think that there are just layers to the show that it's hard to recapture the magic of.
I think you're right. I think it was one of those everything comes together moments where you just had the perfect combination of a great cast, a great idea, lots of passionate people, talented choreographers, and an entire team coming together to make this idea happen. Not a lot of expectations, which I think you see with shows like Andor, where I don't think it's a coincidence that you and I, literally we joked about it as soon as Andor was announced. We're like, okay, there's an Ahsoka show that's announced. There's a Boba Fett show.
This is probably going to be the best show.
There's an Obi-Wan show. And then there's this random fucking character from Rogue One getting his own show. And you and I joked, we were like, watch that be the best show. And it ended up being the best show.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's because there were no expectations on Andor. And so because of that, less pressure and also probably less studio involvement because it's not a flagship character. And so as a result, creatives are allowed to be creative. And I think maybe the same thing happened with the first season of Daredevil because there was nothing to compare it to. No expectations really. First Netflix show. They were just able to cook, and what they cooked was iconic.
I trust that the directors of Born Again are competent. I really love Loki and I loved aspects of Moon Knight, and they have the Punisher showrunner. You know, my only worry being like, I hope that the filmmakers are allowed to cook. Like they should be allowed to do what they want, unblocked by the studio wanting to make it whatever they want to make it.
So I really do agree, and I hope that they cook, that they experiment. So maybe this is a good time to transition and say that there will be a part 2 to this, where we'll be going over Daredevil Born Again in great detail.
So the question is this going to be good? I want to end on the question like, will it be good or something?
Nailed it.
So the question is, oh, hold on. That's not like.
You got this, dude. I believe in you.
All right. So the question is this going to be as good as no, hold on. Not as good as the original show. So the question is this going to be good?
Hell yeah. Nailed it.
Ding, ding, ding,
Oh,
ding,
man.
ding, ding, ding.